Welcome back to Old School Sports and our Out of the Park Baseball 25 series, Can We Save the Oakland A's? And with our Oakland A's about to get underway with their fourth playoff appearance in the past 5 years in a couple of days, we've definitely made some pretty significant progress in saving the A's. Interestingly, we're still operating with the smallest budget in all of baseball. I think realistically to be able to say we truly saved the A's, in addition to becoming a fairly regular playoff team, which we seem to be on the path to at this point. I think it would be nice to get to a point where our budget isn't always the lowest in baseball, and we've still got some work to get to that point with this squad as well. It seems like it's once again a potential win now year for the Oakland A's. We felt that way about this team last year, and honestly, with the fact that we're going to be losing our top two starters, or potentially losing our top two starters, Jackson Ferris and Chase Burns, in this upcoming offseason, as well as Kyle Manzardo, who is one of the most important bats in our lineup this year. Feels like it's another situation where we're going to have to hopefully go on a relatively long playoff run and maybe shock the world with a second World Series win in the past 5 seasons. We're going to be facing off against Baltimore. Before we get into that, I just wanted to apologize to the viewers for being offline the past few days. Had some travel, and I had hoped to get this episode done before I left, to let you know that I wouldn't be around for a few days, and unfortunately things got busy. And although I did put a note on the YouTube site that the next episode wouldn't occur until today, Thursday, August 22nd, I'm guessing that some of you weren't aware of that, so apologies that haven't been as consistent in putting out episodes the last several days, but we are back now. Hopefully we'll get back on a relatively consistent production schedule. And I know that some of you have been distracted by other things, with it being summertime and the Olympics going on and other sporting events and other things to spend your time on, and have gotten a little behind. And hopefully the few days that we were offline enabled you to catch up to us a little bit as well. So as I mentioned, we are in the playoffs for the fourth time in 5 years, about to begin a series against the Baltimore Orioles. We ended up edging Baltimore for the first wild card, which means we will have home field advantage for the 2 or 3 games in that series. We've made some roster decisions at this point, and we can kind of talk through those. We're only going with 12 pitchers, as we typically do for playoff series. And we're clearly only going to need 3 pitchers for a potential 3-game series in our starting rotation. We're going to go with the 3 who are our best this year, Ferris and Burns, who, as we talked about, could be pitching their final games in Oakland, as well as Jamie DeVore. We're going to move Mason Miller into a stopper role. Levi Sterling, who has started for us this year, is going to be our closer now, back into the closer role that he was in part of the season. He's likely going to be a starter for us again next year, with the departures of Ferris and or Burns likely. Did make one potentially interesting move when we were thinking about the pitchers for the playoff roster. We left our 4th or 5th starter, Jason DeCaro, off of the roster. Want to ensure that if we do get past Baltimore, and it takes us 3 games to get there, we've got a fresh starter to go for potential game 1 in an AL division series. So that enabled the lefty Sam Bailey to make the postseason roster. He did a decent job for us after he came up in September. You can see overall the bullpen is pretty solid. Miller really hasn't been in a reliever role for a long time for us. Could be interesting to have him in the stopper role for this series, but we will give it a shot. Lineup-wise, basically we're able to add an extra player to the team because we went down to 12 pitchers, and Andy Toribio, the young utility player who did a nice job for us in a very small sample size of playing time in September. Looks like he is a useful-ish major league bat and a very good defensive infielder with a lot of positional versatility, a little bit of speed. And he's actually going to be playing left field for us against left-handed pitching. We will see how this series goes. This could be a two-and-done kind of situation for us, but hopefully it's the start of a long run with this team through the playoffs. I know some of you like to look at the length of the episodes and figure out whether we had a successful playoff run or not. I don't even know, even if we went on a long playoff run, whether we would get through the entire series in this episode. But if we got bounced out in just 2 days or 2 games to Baltimore, I'll likely spend some time reviewing some of our players and our minor leaguers and doing some of the statistical reviews that I know some of you enjoy and some of you care a little less about. So as we're sitting here in the early stages of this episode, don't let the fact that it's a very short or a very long episode influence how you think the playoffs went, because I'm going to make sure to be mysterious about that fact. And taking a look at the playoffs, the Rangers in our division were the best team in baseball. We were a 96-win team this year. We were also one of the better teams in baseball, but still finished 9 games behind the mighty Rangers. They and the mighty Royals have the byes in the American League. We are the only non-AL East team that is going to be playing in the Wild Card Series this year. Over in the West, the Rockies and the Mets with the byes. The Padres already have a 1-0 lead on the Dodgers, and the Phillies have a 1-0 lead on the Pirates. So a couple of intrastate playoff wildcard series going on in the National League this year. As I mentioned, we are going to be hosting the Baltimore Orioles. The Orioles, with the best offense in the American League, scored 862 runs. Not a great pitching staff, though, tied for 12th in runs against. We, in contrast, were the best pitching staff in the American League, first in the AL in runs allowed, and we ranked 5th in runs scored. So the best pitching staff from Oakland will be going against the best offense in the American League in Baltimore in this series, which is kind of interesting. As I mentioned, we did end up edging the Orioles by a game to earn the home field advantage. Hopefully that will pay off for us. And we did have a 4-3 record against the Orioles this season. We've got Jackson Ferris, who's been our top starter for several years at this point, 11-9 with a 3.60 ERA this year, over 200 strikeouts, and as we've talked about, what could be his final season in Oakland, going up against Justin Lampkin for Baltimore. 29-year-old left-hander was 15-8 with a 3.56 ERA this year for the Baltimore Orioles. And we get a 4-2 win in game number 1. Ferris with the W, Lampkin with the loss, and Levi Sterling with the save. No home runs in the game. We scored a run, or they scored a run in the first. We came back with 3 in the third. Toribio with a run-scoring single, so glad to see him producing, and then a run-scoring double from Boakai. So the bottom of our batting order against left-handed pitching did a good job for us. Came back with another run in the 7th, and they closed the deficit to 2 in the 8th. Couple of hits from Ortega, Colt Keith, and Stubblefield, and Boakai with 2 ribbies, Toribio with the ribby, and Ortega also had the final ribby for us. Ferris, nice outing, 8 strikeouts, 1 earned run over 6 innings, and Miller, our now stopper, and Sterling, our now closer, combined for 3 innings of 1-run relief to get us to the victory. So a good start to the postseason for our Oakland A's. So we will move forward to game number 2. Chase Burns, as we talked about, another guy who could be in his final days in an Oakland A's uniform, 14-7 with a 3.22 ERA, led the league in BABIP and WHIP this year in a nice solid year for the former Los Angeles Dodger. Going up against Jai Watterson, 25-year-old right-hander for Baltimore, led the AL with 21 wins this year, 21-8 record, 3.39 ERA. So given that Baltimore's pitching staff was not particularly impressive, probably would have to say that Watterson is the ace of this staff, although we don't claim that his stuff is particularly intimidating. But he did a nice job this year, but not a nice enough job today. And a 5-2 win for the A's against Baltimore. This marks the 3rd consecutive year that we've gotten past a wild card series, and this was actually our easiest path past wild card series, winning 2 straight games. Burns with the win, Watterson with the loss, Sterling with his 2nd save. The youngster Jake Ortega, last year's Rookie of the Year, is the Wild Card Series MVP. Traded runs in the 1st, came back with 2 in the 3rd and 1 in the 4th to kind of break things open a bit. Run scoring doubles from both Colt Keith and Bobby Cabral in the 3rd. Keith also hit a ribby in the 1st. Keith 2 for 3 with 3 ribbies. Ortega 3 for 4 with a run scored, and I believe Ortega did have a ribby in the 1st game, but maybe a little surprising that Colt Keith doesn't get the MVP award. But congratulations to the homegrown Jake Ortega on adding a AL Wildcard Series MVP to his All-Star appearance earlier this year and his Rookie of the Year last season. Burns with the win, a quality start from him, just 1 hit and 2 walks allowed with 7 strikeouts over 6 innings. Miller allowed the other hit, Scholl and Sterling in relief. And our Oakland A's are on to the American League Divisional Series. And it was a relatively uninteresting series of wild card series. They were all sweeps. We took out the Orioles, as we know. The Yankees swept the Blue Jays. Padres swept the Dodgers, and the Phillies swept the Pirates. So Rockies will be hosting the Padres. Mets will be hosting the Phillies. The Royals will be hosting the Yankees. And our reward for getting by the Orioles is to go on the road to face the best team in baseball, our divisional rivals, the Texas Rangers. We did make the one anticipated tweak, sent down Mr. Bailey, and we brought up Jason DeCaro because we didn't have to go to a Game 3 in the Wild Card Series. Jamie DeVore will get to start Game 1 for us. We'll have Ferris and Burns at home for potentially, definitely Game 3 and potentially Game 4. We're going to keep Sterling in the closer role and Mason Miller in the stopper role for the time being. Just with the amount of work Miller had over the last couple of days, we would need to be resting him for a while to get him back into the rotation. And since DeCaro is fresh, we're going to let him start game number 2 for us. So as we noted, the Rangers were the best team in baseball this year at 105-57. Very well balanced. 2nd in the American League in runs scored, 3rd in runs against. So a high-powered offense supported by an excellent pitching staff. They were 10-9 against us this year, so they did win the season series against us. But we were reasonably competitive with the mighty Texas Rangers, and we will see if we can perhaps be even more competitive in this best-of-5 ALDS. Jamie DeVore, 13-8 with a 3.11 ERA for us. He's a younger pitcher that we picked up in a trade with Atlanta last year. We thought he could be better than he had proven in his first season plus in Atlanta. And he was much better pitching for us than he had been in his initial foray into the majors. So hopefully we'll get a solid outing out of DeVore today. Ben Kudma, the pitcher on the mound for the Rangers, soon to be 31-year-old, was 11-11 with a 4.82 ERA for Texas this season. Game number 1, we take the loss 7-3. The Rangers wiped us out. Riley Green, Wyatt Langford, who's become one of the top players in baseball through this simulation, and Juan Molina with home runs for the Rangers. Colt Keith with a home run for us. Maui Ahuna with certainly an unexpected home run also, but not enough offense and not enough pitching. The Rangers jumped out to a 3-0 lead, and we're ahead 7-1 heading into the 7th inning. So honestly, we were never really in the game. Only 7 hits on the day for us, and the only extra base hits were the home runs by Colt Keith and Maui Ahuna. Rough outing from DeVore. Ian Outh and R.J. Cope were competent working out of the bullpen, but too little, too late from the bullpen after a rough outing from Mr. DeVore in his playoff debut for the Oakland A's. So already down 1-0 in this series. We'll see if we can hopefully steal game number 2 in Texas to put ourselves in a better position for heading back home to Oakland. DeCaro, who, as we mentioned, we sat out that wild card series, 7-9 with a 4.01 ERA for us this year, going up against Bobby Miller from Texas, the 34-year-old right-hander, 17-4 with a 3.45 ERA this year. Another guy whose stuff is not particularly impressive, but seems that the crafty veteran finesse pitcher gets the job done. Didn't get it done today, though. 16-6 victory for Oakland, so we evened things up before heading home. Once again, the Rangers with the home runs. Our old buddy Tyler Soderstrom had a homer for them. Only 21 home runs the last season and a half for Soderstrom with Texas since we traded him away. Marchand and Whirl also with homers. We only got 1 homer from Manzardo, but looks like we broke things open in the later innings by the fact that Chris Carl got the W for us. And it was a very eventful game. We scored 3 in the third. They scored 5 in the bottom of the third. We came back to tie it up with 2 in the top of the fourth. So it was 5-5 heading into the 5th. And then we put up some huge crooked numbers, 6 in the 5th and 5 in the 6th to really blow things out. 21 hits for Oakland. I'm pretty sure that's the most we've ever had in a playoff game with this team. Everyone in the starting lineup had at least 1 hit. Quite honestly, only Manzardo with the home run and Baldwin were held to just 1 hit. Most of the roster had multiple hits in this big offensive outburst for our Oakland A's. DeCaro with a really rough outing, 7 hits, 5 earned runs over 2 2/3. But Carl, Outh, and Cope gave us a good performance out of the bullpen. Jake Ortega named the player of the game after going 2 for 4, 3 runs scored, 3 ribbies, and a couple of walks. So Ortega continuing his strong play that we saw from him in the wild card series. Colt Keith 4 for 6 with 4 ribbies. Could certainly say the same thing about Keith as well. And although on paper we're certainly up against it facing the best team in baseball, you could argue we're in as good a spot as we could hope to be because we are now home for these next 2 games. And we've got our top two starters, Jackson Ferris and Chase Burns, teed up to take the mound for us. So maybe we will be in a position to shock the world once again and get these A's into, at the very least, an ALCS. Ferris back on the mound for us, the lefty. What could be his final appearance in an Oakland A's uniform, going up against the right-hander Bubba Phipps, who was combined 12-9 for San Diego and Texas this year. The Rangers picked him up, looks like, as a not quite a rental, because he is a arbitration eligible player. So the Rangers picked him up to help with their playoff push. Was 3-1 with a 4.12 ERA and 9 starts for Texas. Ground ball pitcher, not incredible stamina. Would hope that maybe with our ace on the mound against Bubba Phipps, we can get the W today and really start putting some pressure on the Rangers. Not to be the case, however. 7-2 victory for Texas, and we are now the team with our proverbial backs against the wall. Texas continues to hit a lot of home runs against us in this series. They scored 2 in the 5th and 3 in the 6th to open up a 5-0 lead. Hung on for the 7-2 victory. Ferris was not good. 5 1/3 innings, 7 hits, 5 earned runs. As good as our starting pitching was this season, it's been disappointing in this playoff series against Texas with 3 straight pretty poor outings from our starting pitchers. Cope did fine in relief, and then we used Miller for some reason, even though he's listed in the stopper role. I guess being the playoffs, being down 5-2 when we brought him in, the hope was maybe he would hold things for us, which he didn't, but we didn't generate enough offense to make that matter one way or the other. So what could be the final day of the season for us in Oakland is upon us here. Chase Burns on the mound. We're going to have to face a elimination game. Chase Burns is a good guy to have on the mound, going up against Dominic Hamill, right-hander, 10-10 with a 4.38 ERA. Fly ball pitcher with pretty good stuff. Really nice curveball for the Rangers. Guy that we had thought about trading for about a year and a half ago when we were looking to bolster last year's team for the playoff run, but never pulled the trigger. And now we're going to need to beat him in the playoffs rather than, as we hoped at one time, potentially having him on our roster for the playoffs. And we do end up getting the W, although the decisions went to the bullpen. Manzardo with a homer. Closer Levi Sterling gets the W. So a 5-4 victory for Oakland, and we're at least going to push Texas as far as we possibly can. Game went into extra innings. We jumped out to a 3-0 lead. They tied it with 3 in the 7th. They took the lead in the 9th. We came back in the bottom of the 9th on a run-scoring single from Ortega to push things into extra innings. And then Ramos, our rental this year, with a run-scoring single in the bottom of the 10th to walk off the Rangers and send us to a decisive game number 5. Couple of hits from Lara Manzardo and Ramos today. Burns with a really nice outing, 2 hits over 6 innings, struck out 10. Miller with a rough outing. Scholl and then Sterling did give up a run in relief, but ended up pitching 2 innings and getting the W. May look to move Miller into a different role for a potential ALCS, but we've got to get to that point before it will become an issue. And the decisive Game 5, and we are the only series that is still going, as the Yankees were swept by the Royals 3-0. The Rockies took out their division rival Padres 3-2. And the Phillies upended the Mets 3-1. Hopefully, we'll be able to follow the model that the Phillies followed in upsetting the more highly regarded team. Game 5 today in Texas, a rematch of game number 1. DeVore and Kudma both on the mound. They were involved in the decisions in game number 1. Our hope is we can turn the turntables the other way here in game number 5. Not to be the case, though. A great pitching matchup, but a 2-1 loss for our Oakland A's. We scored our lone run on a homer by Brian Ramos. Dave Marchand with a home run for the Rangers, and that may have been the series clinching home run, as he was listed as the most valuable player. They took a 1-0 lead in the second on that solo homer by Marchand. We tied it in the 7th on the solo homer by Ramos. Unfortunately, in the bottom of the 8th, Mutsaritis with a run-scoring single off of Scholl. Some good pitching performances in this game, just 5 hits for each team. 2 from Ramos and 2 from Cabral for us. The rest of the offense definitely struggled. They had a 2-hit game from the second baseman, Mutsaritis. Obviously, Marchand with a big hit for them as well to give them the early lead. DeVore did a nice job for us. 3 hits, 1 earned run with 9 strikeouts over 6 innings. We got 2/3 of a perfect inning from Miller, and then Scholl came in and he gave up the run. It ended up being unearned. Error by Scholl was the one error that we had, so he did not help his own cause. Mason Miller injured while pitching, just day-to-day with hand soreness, so should not become a issue that impacts whether or not we will exercise our final team option on Miller this coming off season. But unfortunately, the 2033 season is over for the Oakland A's here on Saturday, October 15th. Texas and Kansas City will be facing off in the ALCS with the 2 best teams in the American League, and the Rockies and the Phillies will be facing off in the NLCS this year. And we'll obviously move on to do our detailed deep dive of our roster in subsequent episodes, as well as a hopefully fulsome review of our farm system for those of you who are interested in those things. But in the interest of keeping those who haven't started this episode yet wondering whether we made a longer playoff run or not, we will take a quick look at some of our former players and some of the guys that we have been tracking over the years and see exactly how those players did here in this 2033 season before we finish up the episode and begin moving on to some other tasks. Taking a look at some of the top pitching prospects we've followed over the years. Jesus Escobar still stuck in rookie ball for the Pirates organization. 5-2 record, 3.60 ERA, listed as the number 58 prospect in baseball. Definitely seems questionable whether his stuff is really going to be high-end major league quality. Jeremy Martin remains a good, solid major league pitcher. You may remember him. The guy came out of Indiana. Thought about taking him as a college pitcher. 13-11 with a 4.11 ERA this year. A good, solid major league starter. Kevin Patterson is a guy we wished we could have drafted out of the University of California when he was coming out, but he went before we had an opportunity. 13-8 his first full year in the majors with Miami, 3.64 ERA. Connor Pfister, 25-year-old, still has not made his major league debut. 10-7 with a 5.54 ERA in AAA, and it looks like he was released and was a recent minor league free agent signing into the Boston Red Sox organization. So Mr. Pfister out of Georgia Tech has not had the career that he had hoped for as someone who's almost 26 years old now. Juan Sanabria spent the year in Double-A Birmingham and then injured with a torn UCL in June. Going to be out for 10 months still from that, so he's going to likely miss almost all of next year at 25 years old. The international free agent signing from that first IAFA period has not really become the pitcher we thought he might. Cruz Schoolcraft, guy who we picked right near the top of the draft many years ago, spent this year between Double-A Reading and Triple-A Lehigh Valley in the Phillies organization, was a combined 7-12 across those two levels. He still is batting a bit more in the Double-A level. Did have 13 homers in 181 at-bats, but also struck out 77 times and hit just 204. So is a soon-to-be 27-year-old early next year. Schoolcraft's career hasn't really turned out as we hoped it might. Alan Walling, left-hander, was 11-9 with a 3.91 ERA for the Angels this year. Turning to some hitters, we've already talked about Schoolcraft, the two-way guy. Byron Dervish, 25-year-old, got a very brief opportunity with Houston this year, just 1 for 13. Must have been injured because he played just 13 games this year. No, he was not injured. He was up, it looks like, on the Houston Astros roster the entire year, and he had only 13 at-bats with no games started. That is pretty hard to do, but Dervish not having a brilliant career, certainly. Jesus de la Campa, international free agent signing, did a great job in AAA Omaha, hitting .348, and then he hit .320 this year in 200 major league at-bats. We certainly liked his ability to make contact and his speed when we were scouting him, and De La Campa looks like he could be another good player for that strong Kansas City team. David Orta, IAFA signing, spent the whole year in Double-A, did have 17 home runs, but hit just .226 at 24 years old. Doesn't look like Orta is ever going to be a good enough hitter at the major league level, so that was a good miss by us, making a different IAFA signing that year. Bobby Vermillion, left fielder with that Hidero Endo-esque profile, was picked 29th overall a year ago. Rookie ball this year, hit a .196, striking out in almost half of his at-bats. Daniel Campos, a center fielder, the number 28 prospect in baseball, made his major league debut towards the end of this season and was just 7 for 63, hitting a .111 in 63 at-bats with the Brewers. Greg Cuff, 4th overall pick in 2032. He was also picked out of high school in 2029, but didn't end up signing. Split the year between rookie ball and high A ball. Hit just a .190 with 5 homers and 147 at-bats in high A ball. Still has a profile that looks like he could be a pretty interesting major league bat, especially with that home run power. But at soon to be 23 years old, he's going to have to start realizing some of that potential sooner rather than later. We'll turn our attention now to some former players or former close to being Oakland A's players. Hidero Endo led the American League in strikeouts with 265 this year. The only time he hasn't was last year when injuries likely kept him from doing that. Batting average just a .194. Did have 36 homers and 88 ribbies and a 108 WRC plus and a 2.4 WAR. So that's actually one of the more productive major league seasons that Mr. Endo has had. but at this point he has led the American League in strikeouts in 5 of his 6 major league seasons. And he set 3 consecutive single-season playoff records, single-season strikeout records, his first 3 years in the majors. But over the course of his major league career, has put up a 101 WRC plus, so he has been, by definition, a league average offensive player when the good from the wacky amount of home runs he hits is offset by the bad, largely the .99 career batting average with the insane number of strikeouts. Royce Lewis had a respectable-ish year for Milwaukee. Batted just .226, but did have 18 homers and 11 steals, 85 WRC plus, only a 1 WAR. Feel pretty good that we didn't give him the money he was looking for. Shoji Bame led the NL with 221 strikeouts this year, but hit .259 with 42 homers and a 139 WRC plus. So a nice offensive year from the professor, who we missed out on as a free agent a couple years ago. Longtime shortstop Brian Rincon, let him leave as a free agent this year. He hit 200, did have 13 homers and 29 steals for the Dodgers, but when all was said and done, an 83 WRC plus and a 2.6 WAR, and he is still locked up for many more years in that Dodgers organization. Sergio Figueroa, a prospect in our system, and we traded him away this year when we rented Ramos for a second consecutive season. Figueroa ended up spending all of his time in rookie ball after we traded him away, hit .272 down there. But the fact that they didn't even keep him in A ball, which is where he was with us at the age of 21, probably not a great sign for Figueroa. Galterio Mancina ended up getting banged up with a torn PCL in August. He's going to miss spring training. Hit .293 with 19 homers and 423 at-bats, so he was not nearly as dynamic offensively as he was in his first full season in the majors in 2032 when he won the AL MVP, but still put up a 143 WRC plus this year. Prince Moultrie is a guy that we traded away to reunite with Drake Baldwin this year, and he was in Double-A in the Eastern League with the Akron Rubber Ducks at the end of the season. Hit .236 with a homer in 72 at-bats. Still think his contact could be interesting, but when you combine that with below-average gap power and eye and dismal home run power, I'm still not too concerned about moving on from Moultrie, although I know that some of you disagree with me on that. And Arturo Estrada, the number 98 prospect in baseball, we moved on from him when we rented Juan Soto last season. John Thomas Estrada spent most of the year in high A ball, where he did pretty well, but he did struggle when he got to Double-A, 10 for 51 with 1 homer and a 14 WRC plus for John Thomas in his Double-A debut this year. And a few pitchers that we've been tracking. Andres Rojas, some injury issues this year, was 6-5 with a 3.72 ERA for Miami in 15 starts. Looks healthy now after missing a good chunk of the beginning of the year. Chris Patterson, 24-year-old, was 7-8 with a 3.70 ERA for the Rays. And last but not least, Joe Lewin, a important pitching prospect that we had, and we traded him away when we rented Ramos a year ago. He was kind of the key guy we gave up in that deal. Had one start in rookie ball, and then was promoted to A, where he went 3-2 with a 2.45 ERA. Still looks like he could be a useful major league starter. Probably not exactly what we were hoping for when we picked him 43rd overall with a supplemental first-round pick in 2030, however. And with that, we will call it an episode. Next time around, we'll start our end of season review and start planning out what the roster might look like next year, where we may look for some help this upcoming off season. We'll also find out who actually wins the World Series. Will not be the Oakland A's, although as we talked about in the playoffs for a fourth time in 5 years, we ended up getting bounced 3-2 by the Rangers in the ALDS. Our contract is up. We did reach the playoffs. We did a modest upgrade at second base and a modest improvement in team steals this year. I would hope with 4 out of 5 playoff appearances in the last 5 seasons that we'll get a nice extension from Mr. Fisher when the time comes for that, but we'll likely be finding that out in the next episode as well. Until then, thanks so much for watching, and hope you have a great day.